Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ruby portion of our Rise of the Floodborn review. Today, our hosts are myself, Blake, and none other than top 100 Billboard artist with his latest single, Blakey Song. Please welcome Spencer. Spencer, how are you today?
I'm doing just fine, Blake.
Good. Well, let's just get right into it with our first Ruby card, Baloo, Fun Loving Bear, who is a 3-cost inkable 4/3 Storyborn ally with 1 lore, vanilla. Nice, simple vanilla. Nice, simple draft pick. Nothing too crazy going on here.
Yeah, he's just Ruby Jasper.
Yeah, that is no, wait, horse. That's a horse. Jasper has the ability.
Horus, yes. Ruby Jasper would be dope. That would be crazy.
Yeah.
Oh.
Nice, solid stat line. Maybe Ruby will appreciate him a little more with because they like challenging things, but horse, even I'm mixing up now. Horse never really saw any play, so
Yeah, like you said, limited draft. All right, moving on. We've got Bawn, Precocious Entrepreneur. 2-cost inkable, 2/3 with 1 lore, Storyborn ally. He's just Donald Duck with a different face.
and no Floodborn to speak of, unfortunately. So unfortunately, he probably won't see play because of that.
Yeah, until he gets one.
All right, continuing this vanilla trade, we have Card Soldiers, full deck, 5-cost, inkable, 5/5, Storyborn ally with 2 lore.
Cool.
Yeah.
I do think that's the first card we've seen with that stat line, though, as far as vanillas go. But yeah, I mean it's not bad.
But again, vanilla mostly for draft, and yeah, I don't think we'll see them outside of that for constructed.
For sure. All right, next up we have our first non-vanilla, and it is a legendary Donald Duck. Not again. I know that was not a Donald Duck voice, but you'll just have to deal with it. It's a 5-cost inkable, 1/5 with 1 lore, sort of. He has evasive and fooey. This character gets +1 lore for each 1 damage on him. So he could potentially have 4 damage on him and go up to 5 lore, which is pretty cool. That's the most lore you can get on a character outside of like crazy Tamatoa shenanigans. So it's pretty cool. Can combo with some healing stuff.
Can also combo with some damage stuff, some items that we'll get to later down our review. Definitely some fun plays I see once we go through those cards, and I'm sure you'll be able to put those pieces together once we get there. But I think you'll see some
We
play.
trust you, viewers. I said like the big thing is that if he doesn't have damage on him, he's pretty bad. So like you have to get damage on him.
Yeah, getting damage on him will be the key, and you definitely want to do that outside of challenging because he's not doing much damage to whatever he challenges into, and he'll get the clap back probably because your opponent won't let him sit around to get that lore benefit.
Well, I mean, he's got evasive at least, so I mean, that's like the main thing that's going for him.
Yeah, but we shall see how he does. But for now, we'll go ahead and move on to Felicia, always hungry, a 1-cost inkable 3/1 reckless. So no lore on her. Basically, a turn 1 Gaston with some different stats. I think she could see some play, potentially. 3 attack basically knocks out whatever your opponent puts down. Nothing too crazy though.
Yeah, I mean, she trades up really well, really well. She's a great counter for Simba shenanigans as well as other bodyguards and other valuable stuff that has 3 willpower, or even just smacking something real hard and then following up with another character. Trading off a 1 cost doesn't feel bad. you know? So I think she's definitely going to see play, especially in the, like control type Ruby decks that just want to like control your board. She's awesome at that. Next up, we have Fidget, Radigan's Henchman, who's just such a cool character. 3 cost inkable, 3/2 1 lore and evasive, Dreamborn ally. He's just Ruby's version of Peter Pan from Emerald. He's a good answer to some other evasives. Other than that, he's kind of meh. So, kind of if you're going for an evasive heavy, or if you're looking for cheap answers for evasives, then he might fit into your deck. And of course, he's always a good pick for draft because anything with evasive is a good pick for draft.
I've just noticed that with quite a few of the cards. This set with evasive is that they're like answers to the set one evasives rather than being the lore questers of set one. They're to challenge the evasives of set one. So
Yeah,
pretty interesting to see, and I do love him as a character. I think he was probably one of my favorites from Great Mouse Detective, just as a little henchman that scuttled around. All right, so our next card is Honest John, not that honest. He is a 3 cost uninkable, 2/3 with 1 lore, with the ability Easy Street. Whenever you play a Floodborn character, each opponent loses 1 lore. So definitely sees play in a Floodborn heavy deck. And I feel like this is one of the stronger Floodborn Matters cards. Prevents your opponent from getting closer to their end goal with lore. So helps you stall out the game and able to continue forwarding your plan. And it gets really scary when you have multiple of him on the board.
yeah, for sure. If you've got a lot of Floodborns in your deck, then he can get some really good value throughout the game. Like I fully agree he's one of the better Floodborn Matters cards, but with him being uninkable, we'll see whether he makes it into decks or not. But of course, as we get more and more Floodborns as sets go on, then we might see more and more Floodborn heavy decks. Next up, we have Lady Tremaine, Imperious Queen, who is a 6 cost uninkable, 3/4 with 2 lore. She has Shift 4 and Power to Rule at Last. When you play this character, each opponent chooses and banishes one of their characters. It's pretty good. I mean, she's kind of a AoE Dragonfire on a stick. The only consideration is that your opponent gets to choose what character they have. So she's really good in a deck where you're really focused in on controlling the board and trying to keep your opponent's character count down, so that they only have one option. Especially if your opponent's playing, a deck that's more focused on like a mid-range style of curving out, or like ramping up to big stuff where they're only playing one thing per turn, then she can be really really good. And in multiplayer, hitting all of your opponents is always nice.
Yeah, definitely a multiplayer. And yeah, I want to say because it's your opponent choosing, I believe this gets around ward as well.
Yes, it should. Yeah, so if your opponent's sitting there at 17 lore with that cheeky Cusco trying to thinking they got the game in the bag, well, we got an answer now, other than be prepared.
I'm the cheeky player with the Cusco with 17 lore. Uh oh.
Now, you're the cheeky player with a Donald and 18 lore.
That's true. I have Donald with 18 lore.
I think one of the big things holding this card back is the next card we're going to talk about, which is the card that she shifts onto.
Yeah, not a currently doesn't have a good shift target. So yeah, I'll go ahead and go into this one, which is Lady Tremaine, overbearing matriarch. She is a 2-cost uninkable 2/2 with 1 lore and the ability Not For You. When you play this character, each opponent with more lore than you loses 1 lore. So basically Aladdin, but with a condition. So she definitely doesn't feel as good to come out as early. Uh, doesn't really take a wolf lore away unless you're going second. So just feels really bad in comparison to the cheap Aladdin and also an inkable. So really, really hurting.
Yeah, that's really the big thing is, because like she's uninkable already, or the shift, the Imperious Queen, the big one, is uninkable. Then this one's uninkable, and then there's so many other uninkables that Ruby wants to be running that it gets tough. And with her being conditional, like yeah, she's one ink cheaper than Aladdin, but being conditional and uninkable, that's pretty tough. So I'm not a fan of this card. Nor am I particularly a fan of our next card, which is Lumiere Hotheaded Candelabra. Now, the art I love. The art is phenomenal. But a 7 cost inkable 7/7 with for 2 lore. I mean, it's a big body, which is cool, but I just don't know if it has that much value. Um, at that cost. So we'll see if there's a spot for him in some decks, but I think he's mostly going to be relegated to limited play.
Yeah, definitely. At 7 ink, you're wanting to see some sort of ability that impacts the board at that point in the game. A big body that does nothing is just going to be responded with a removal card by that point in the game. So, yeah, hopefully there will be something that makes them shine outside of just a ramp deck or something.
Yeah, it kind of gets to a point of like diminishing returns of 7 strength just isn't it's not a big break point in the game. Like I'd rather have something with like Cobra Bubbles or Triton's stats of 5/9, because that nine's going to keep you on the board really well, and 5 is enough to trade into a lot of stuff. Whereas 7, there's not really anything with 7 willpower. At least not a lot of things.
All right. Moving on to Minnie Mouse Stylish Surfer. 3 cost inkable, 1/3 evasive with 2 lore. Solid little evasive character. I'm not sure she really sees much play unless you're doing an all evasive stack.
I don't know, man. I think she might replace Pongo. Coming out a turn earlier with 2 lore, just giving up 1 strength, which you don't really care about strength on evasive characters because you don't want them getting challenged. So I think she might see some play. I think she's a good little lore engine.
Now that you mention that, yeah, these type of evasive characters that do want a quest, you do want the higher willpower because more often they're getting removed by removal and especially steel. So 3 is a nice, kind of a nice breakpoint almost. But
There's a lot of like stuff now that has 3 strength that can deal with evasives. You got the Fidget we just talked about, Peter Pan, the new Cruella, the 2 cost Cruella. But those are tech cards. Those are things that your opponent has to be teching into their deck specifically to deal with cards like this. And if there's not enough of this in the meta to where they're super worried about evasives, then you might be able to get off a couple of cheeky quests with this early on in the game, before your opponent's able to bring something out to deal with it.
yeah, very true.
And they don't really want to invest something like a Let It Go, in a mini. Like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, hard removal for this definitely is in your favor if they're using it on that many.
next up, we have Minnie Mouse Wide Eyed Diver. who's a 4-cost inkable 2/3 with shift 2, 1 lore, evasive, and the ability Undersea Adventure. When you play a second action in a turn, this character gets +2 lore this turn. I think this is a bad card, particularly compared to the mini that we just talked about. Like that mini is cheaper. It's a guaranteed 2 lore, and the stats aren't that much different. Whereas, like if you shift that mini into this mini, then you're naturally at 1 less lore, and then in order to gain more lore, you'd have to play 2 actions, and it's just like I'd much rather take the guaranteed 2 lore versus a conditional 3 lore that requires a -2 card advantage to accomplish. Um, I'd rather just run the other one.
Yeah, and uh, from what I've seen from the Actions Matters cards, you're not really wanting to, at least from what I've been speculating, you're not really wanting to throw that many actions out in a turn unless this is paired with like Artful Rogue Mickey, which they both get to pop off with multiple actions being played. Otherwise, you're committing a lot to just get to lore. Unless the actions you're playing
Yep.
are really that impactful, I'm just not seeing it with this set at least. Maybe one day in the future there will be some crazy actions that you can play with this that'll make it a bit more consistent or better. I'm not saying it for this set.
Yeah. And like one of the big things is she caps out at 3 lore. Like she can't continue gaining. It's not for every 2 actions you play she gains 2 lore. It's just on your second one she gains 2 lore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she has a cap, so once you play two, you're done. It's so if there was some crazy action shenanigans where you wanted to play, like the comparison I'm thinking of is like the rogue class in Hearthstone. They had a deck where it was basically just play actions that drew actions that let you play cheaper actions, and just this infinite almost
Mm-hmm.
combo of just continuously playing actions, but they capture there. So playing like that doesn't get you nearly as much as it could. But enough of that mini. Let's go on to our last one here. Another Minnie Mouse zipping around. 2-cost inkable 3/2 with 1 lore. Vanilla. Again,
Yep.
just vanilla, solid vanilla with some stats that we've seen before.
Yeah, I mean stuff like this is useful for like certain trades, especially like trading up. But if that's what the goal of the card is, I mean, you've got Gaston, who's just way better at it and hits that 4 strength breakpoint that's so important for a lot of cards. But
Mhm.
but the mini, she can quest for 1 lore, and she does have the ability for you to choose when to challenge. You don't have to because she doesn't have reckless, so there is that. So she could be valuable, but I think from what it is that you want to be doing with this card, there's better options in Ruby.
Uh, yeah, and I will say for the Floodborn mini, neither of the ones that we got from this set are the ones you really want to shift on. You kind of want to shift onto the one drop one from set one.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next up we have Mother Gothel, Withered and Wicked, who is a 2-cost inkable 3/4, 1 lore with this character enters play with 3 damage. So it essentially comes into play as a 3/1 for 2 costs, but this is very much a tech card in either a healing matters or a damage matters deck. We don't really have like damage matters in the way that this thing cares about as much in the game so far, but it could totally happen where it's like deal damage. You get an action that's deal damage to a chosen character based equal to the amount of damage that's on one of your characters or something like that. But right now, this card's really good, if you're going for a healing matters sort of situation.
Yeah, definitely, and very thematic with the card everyone thought of immediately with Rapunzel from last set. Play her Mother Gothel and then play Rapunzel and draw 3 cards off of her. Yeah, gonna be. I'm very interested to see where this kind of card goes and if we'll see more cards like this in the future. Just these bigger than average stats where you gotta heal them back up. Hearthstone had a lot of cards like these, so it was very fun to see what you could do with cards like that. So I'm very interested to see where they'll go with the healing and how quickly you'll be able to get these back to full health so you can take advantage of those bigger than average stat lines. Alrighty, next one is Mulan Soldier in Training. 4 cost uninkable, 4/3 with 1 lore and rush. Kind of a Zeus that gets to keep the attack, but 1 less health.
And one less lore.
1 less lore, too, yeah. I guess if you need that sort of spot filled and you're not running Amethyst, you would play her, but I currently don't see any color combinations that would care about this rush. Most of the cards that care about rush are in Amethyst, so I think you would rather play Zeus over her.
Yeah, I agree. And even in Ruby, for one more ink, you've got Maui, who's absolutely insane and is inkable. Like, I just don't think that this card just has a place outside of limited currently. So we'll see. Then we have Namari Nemesis, another 4 cost uninkable, 3/3, 1 lore, with the ability Exert, banish this character, banish chosen character. So she's basically a Dragonfire that you can play early and just sit on the board until you decide to use it, which is kind of cool, especially in a more control-oriented deck where, if you're keeping your opponent's board pretty clear, then, if they don't have an answer for this, then they know whatever big valuable thing they put onto the board is going to drop, and if they're using their removal on Namari, you probably don't feel too bad, because then your higher cost, more valuable characters that you're building up to with a control deck are more safe. So I think she's a big threat, and she can be useful.
I will say that's the most positive I've heard someone talk about this card. So, do you feel like people are maybe sleeping on this one a bit?
I maybe I think there's a space for her. I don't know how valuable she's gonna be. Like, I don't know how much better she is than, like, just having a Dragonfire for one more ink, that you can use immediately. But I think just being able to put her on the board and just have that threat, um, that your opponent, like, it's mind games. Your opponent is it's gonna change how your opponent plays the game, seeing this card sitting on the board.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I can definitely get behind that. So, next up, we have Queen of Hearts, Impulsive Ruler. 2 cost inkable, 2/2 with Rush and 1 lore. I think this is one of the first inkable Rush cards outside of Maui. And
Yeah.
I don't think that stat line is doing her any favors with this. And I think the main thing you want her for is to shift her onto the next card that we'll talk about. But you have any opinions on this particular Queen of Hearts?
Well, I think just she's got. I mean, the stat line, I'd much rather see like a 3/1 than 2/2 at this cost. But the fact that she's inkable is phenomenal for a rush card, and it's just nice to have. Like, if you drop a Felicia turn 1, you go second. Opponent drops a Lilo, you drop a Felicia, they still drop the Simba, thinking that, you don't really have any answers, but then Felicia trades into Simba, and then you can rush out this Queen of Hearts to deal with the Lilo. Like, there are lines of play where she's valuable, or just treating her like a not very good fire the cannons, so just being able to come in and ping something for two and finish them off is nice, taking your opponents by surprise, and without having that risk of the uninkable nature of a lot of other rush characters. So I think she's got some value on her own, but then the fact that she also has other value in the terms of being a flood shift target is also really nice. So like I wouldn't be upset about including this in my deck so that I could shift onto it. You know what I mean? I think there's value to the card. And talking about shifting onto that card, we have the Queen of Hearts Sensing Weakness, a 5-cost inkable, 4/3, Floodborn Villain Queen with Shift 2. Let the game begin. Whenever one of your characters challenges another character, you may draw a card. And she has 1 lore. This is phenomenal for Ruby because Ruby does not have much in the way of draw. And having a really solid card like this that allows you to not only draw for doing things you probably already plan on doing anyways, but get a lot of value out of it. If you have a wide board and can challenge multiple things, then this card can really swing a game in Ruby's favor in terms of card advantage. Because if you're taking out your opponent's stuff and drawing at the same time, that's pretty dope.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole challenge matters thing is, I think, just a great archetype for Ruby because it's rewarding you for something you're already doing in the game. So just getting to challenge and draw is just amazing. I can't really hype it up more than it already does for itself.
For sure.
All right, so we'll move on to our next card with Radigan, Very Large Mouse, 5-cost uninkable, 3/3 with 2 lore, and the ability This Is My Kingdom. When you played this character, exert chosen opposing character with 3 strength or less. Choose one of your characters and ready them. They can't quest for the rest of this turn. Very interesting, and this was the first card I heard a lot of people compare to Yu-Gi-Oh, where they had to read it 3 or 4 times to really grasp what this card could do.
That's surprising. It's pretty straightforward.
If you take your time and read it, yeah.
Yes, reading the card does explain the card.
But it is very wordy for what we've seen so far. But I don't know about this one. It's an interesting ability. I guess the bigger benefit is just being able to ready one of your own characters. The first part, I think you can just kind of ignore for right now, unless it does. I guess the line of play I do see is playing him after something like Aladdin, the Floodborn Aladdin, ready him back up and exert one of your opponent's weaker characters that they left standing so that you can swing into him again. So I guess you can see some play, but I don't think you would see like a full play set of him. Maybe a couple copies as a little tech card.
Yeah, I mean it's just nice. Like you've seen with the Ruby control deck, the Elsa Aladdin combo and how powerful that can be. And this one is, it's all built together just in Ruby by itself, which is nice. It's got some conditions to it, but it's a very situational card, and I don't really like situational, especially on uninkable cards with bad stat lines. So I don't think it'll really see a lot of play unless we see some really interesting combos that come out with it in the future. All right, next up we have Raya, however you want to say it. Headstrong, 3-cost inkable, 2, 3. Storyborn Hero Princess. Note to self, don't die. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may ready this character. She can't quest for the rest of this turn. And she has 1 lore. This is pretty cool because, if you're able to pick off something small and survive, you ready up, meaning you can either challenge again or try to survive around another turn. And with all of these challenge matters cards, like the queen we just talked about, and something coming up here in a minute, then being able to get that additional value out of her, and it's just built into the card, is pretty nice.
The only thing getting me with this one is the stat line. Definitely can't do pop off this effect a lot or very often, especially later in the game. So it's going to be interesting to see if she can find a place somewhere. And I think she would fit in pretty nicely with like a sapphire that could give her resist. That would be interesting, being able to go in and challenge a wide board of small things.
Mm-hmm.
Would be interesting to see if something like that could pop off. But
Or her and Radigan both, since we just talked about him, work really well with Amber and Sapphire as well, but Amber's better at it. Their strength reduction stuff. So like Rhea, or this Raya, whatever her name is, plus the Queen that gives something -4 strength, and one of your characters +4 strength. That can be huge. Like, target this Raya with it. Whatever you're going into as -4 strength, she's got +4. She swings into it, survives, and then now she's a 6 strength and swings into something else and takes it out. Like, pretty dope.
that's definitely a line of play there.
That is a play.
That is a play. Yeah, let's move on to Raya, Leader of Heart. She's a 6-cost inkable, 5/3 with 2 lore, Floodborn Hero Princess, Shift 4, and then she has the ability Champion of Kumandra. Whenever this character challenges a damaged character, she takes no damage from the challenge. A pretty solid ability, and definitely goes into like the challenge matters stuff, and maybe even if there's like a ruby steel ping deck that just ping a bunch of characters with like Tinkerbell and just let her go ham on the rest of the board.
Yeah, being able to trade and not take damage back is phenomenal, but she's kind of squishy, and your opponent can always come in with the clapback if you don't have some way of readying her. So this card's probably a guaranteed 2-for-1, but what the value of those two are is who knows. So then we have another Raya Warrior of Kumandra, who's a 4-cost inkable, 5/3 with 1 lore. So same stat line, just about. Just doesn't have all the fancy shenanigans, and it's a potential shift target. It can smack stuff as well. It's decent and limited. Other than that, nothing too exciting.
Yeah, no, decent and limited indeed. Let's go on to Scar, Vicious Leader, Vicious Cheater. 7-cost uninkable, 6/5 with 2 lore, Storyborn Villain. He has Rush and the ability Daddy Isn't Here to Save You. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may ready this character. He can't quest for the rest of this turn. So, a lot of people compared this to a kind of be prepared just for your opponent's board. If you're lucky enough and your opponent left everything exerted for you.
Yeah, and they all have low strength.
Yeah, I don't think he has quite enough willpower to plow through an entire board, like people hope. But definitely can
Mm-hmm.
take at least 2 or 3 cards on 7, so that may be solid enough, but definitely pairs better if you have the Queen of Hearts or the next card on board.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at him, I just compare him to Maui. And this scar is probably going 2 for 1, right? At 7 cost on Inkable. Maui also almost always goes 2 for 1 at 5 cost Inkable. Um, so when combining this scar with the challenge matters cards, then you can get some additional value out of them, which is nice. I'm just not quite certain exactly how valuable he's going to be. I'm excited to see him on the table and see just how good he is.
If anything, yeah, you're basically paying 2 more for Maui that you don't have to use your shield ability on. So I guess you save an ink there.
I mean, even then, like Maui usually, he'll go in, he'll take something out, and then he's a big nasty threat that's sitting on the board. So usually your opponent's going to challenge something into him, which means they're taking
Yeah.
damage. They might be banished, probably with his big old strength, and then they're also not questing with that character. So there's going to be situations where one's better than the other, but with Maui being inkable and a 5 cost, I think he wins out. But there's nothing saying that you can't run both in your deck. So alrighty. Then next up, we have the Crim de la Crim of the Challenge Matters archetype, which is Shere Khan, Menacing Predator. 3 cost Inkable, 3/3 with 1 lore, and the ability Don't Insult My Intelligence. Whenever one of your characters challenges another character, you gain 1 lore. So, as you're challenging, you're also progressing your win con. So, you're controlling the board state, preventing your opponent from progressing their win con, and progressing yours at the same time. It's amazing.
Yeah. This, I think this guy even sees play outside of just challenge matters. Like he's just that good. Letting because you're whenever you do challenge, even when you are on a questing heavy deck, every once in a while you do have to challenge, and if you have him on board, you don't have to worry about missing out on too much lore. You still get to just challenge without abandon and continue getting lore.
Yeah, I think this card is gonna make like the healing archetype very sad because the healing archetype is pretty reliant on getting challenged, and so giving you the opportunity to gain stuff for challenging them on top of things is going to make them very sad.
All right. Moving on to Tigger, one of a kind, a 3 cost inkable 3/3 with 1 lord, Dreamborn Tigger, with the ability Energetic. Whenever you play an action, this character gets +2 strength this turn. So, following along with most of the other actions matters cards, getting the +2 strength. So, becoming 5/3 or more, depending on what action you choose. If you choose to use it on Tigger, could get even more strength with something like Vicious Betrayal or Charge or anything like that. Basically, have a way to help them trade up into things. Could be pretty solid. I don't, I don't know. It depends on what actions and what inks you pair them with.
Yeah, I mean the ability for this character to just like trade up with way more valuable characters is pretty incredible. Especially when you're playing actions that either boost him, like you said, or just do other things that are impacting the board in valuable ways. Is pretty nice. We'll see if he actually makes it into decks or not, just because there's so many good value traders in Ruby already. Um, and the other best color to pair him with, which is probably steel, also really good value traders in there. So we shall see. But I think in limited, Great card.
Oh yeah, definitely pretty solid and limited.
Then we have Tuck Tuck Wrecking Ball. 4 cost, uninkable. 4/5 with Reckless. I forget who it is. It was somebody in one of the discords was like really liking this, and I love the character Tuck Tuck, but I am not really a big fan. But I might be sleeping on this. I mean, 4/5 is like a stat line for a 5 cost, and this is just a 4 cost uninkable, and it has Reckless. So I don't really know if it's that valuable to have it out 1 turn early.
I feel like it would be a little better if the stats were swapped and he was a 5/4.
Also true. Or if he had Rush.
Yeah. Yeah, if he had Rush too, that would definitely. But this is how he is. So we'll see how he plays out.
True.
All right, that is it for the characters. So we are now getting into the actions and other fun stuff. Starting with Go the Distance, 2 cost inkable action song. Ready, chosen damage character of yours. They can't quest for the rest of this turn. Draw a card. Pretty okay, I think. The only thing I don't like about it is the condition of the character you having to ready needing to be damaged. I guess we'll see how this card plays, but at the very least, some more draw for Ruby.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cantrip, which is great. So, and it's a song, so you can literally just get off a free draw and, filter through your deck if you have to. But I think this card really plays into the whole challenge matters theme of Ruby this particular set, just because the idea is you challenge something and then you ready it, because if you challenge something you're taking damage unless you've got resist and whatnot. So that's really kind of the idea of challenge something, ready it, so either you can challenge again or it stays safe, and then you get some card advantage on top of it. So I think it's a good card, and I think it'll see play. Our next action song is Teeth and Ambitions, a 2 cost inkable card that says deal 2 damage to chosen character of yours. 2, deal 2 damage to another chosen character. So you deal 2 damage to one of your characters. Doesn't matter if they have resist, they don't have to take the damage. They just have to be dealt it. And then you get to deal 2 damage to another chosen character. That could also be one of your characters, or it could be one of your opponent's characters. Totally up to you, depending on ward and all that fun stuff. So this could be really good with some of these like damage matter situations, or if you're going for like Amber Ruby or Sapphire Ruby healing matters, or like Blake alluded to way early on in the episode, is combining it with the legendary Donald Duck that gains more lore whenever it has damage on it. You can deal 2 damage to him, get 2 more lore, do deal damage to something else, which is pretty nice.
Yep, pretty solid, and yeah, just a nice, cheap way to get some removal on board if you're willing to damage your own stuff. Pretty solid, I think. Okay, next one is the Most Diabolical Scheme, a 3 cost uninkable action song. That is banish chosen villain of yours to banish chosen character. Not sure if this one's really going to see play just yet. I can't really think of a villains heavy deck yet that wants to run this, and most of the villains that we have so far you kind of want to keep alive to do things unless you really need a last ditch effort to banish something outside of Dragonfire. I think maybe one day we'll see some villains that get to do some stuff when they're banished, and that's when this card will start to see play.
Yeah, this definitely like feels very villainous, sacrificing your characters to deal with your opponents. Um, so we currently don't have anything that combos with it, but I think in the future we probably will, like Blake was saying. And at that point, it might see some play, but right now it's not very good. All right, next up we have another Radigan card. What did you call me? Which is a 1-cost inkable action that says chosen damaged character gets +3 strength this turn. Again, this is falling into that damage matters category. The fact that it is conditional is unfortunate, and between this and he's got a sword, I'd just run he's got a sword for the guaranteed +2 strength.
Yeah, the condition kind of kills it for this. um, yeah, we need to see more. This is the kind of stuff where, kind of like the Mother Gothel that we got that comes in damage. This is the kind of card that you would want to pair with cards like that. But we only have Mother Gothel that really comes in damaged. So, and there's still not a lot of ping your own stuff outside of Teeth Inhibitions or using some steel cards to try to ping your own stuff. So, I don't think this will see play quite yet. Moving on to You Can Fly, 2-cost inkable action song. Chosen character gains evasive until the start of your next turn. I guess this could be a solid tech option potentially if you have something that you really want to keep safe, but you think your opponent isn't running any action removal to handle your characters to protect. I don't. I, I honestly don't think this will see a lot of play. I can't think of a reason to run this.
I mean, it's a pretty solid card. I mean, once again, it's a tech card, but it gives you options, especially with the challenge matters deck. Like one of the biggest issues is going to be running into evasive characters that your stuff like Aladdin Heroic Outlaw and Scar and all this other stuff can't challenge. And so just having this as an option and giving you the ability to suddenly, jump up in the air and smack that genie down, or that brave little tailor or whatever it is, can be pretty nice.
Yeah, that is true.
Then we have our first item, which is Dinnerbell, a 4-cost uninkable with the ability You Know What Happens, which is exert and pay 2 ink to draw cards equal to the damage on chosen character of yours, then banish them. This is has the potential to draw you a lot of cards, which Ruby really lacks, and is pretty nice for that. Apparently, I sleep on it though because I don't think it's that valuable, especially now that we've seen Queen of Hearts as well as a couple of cantrips and things of that nature in Ruby. Plus, a lot more draw in the other colors as well. But this could definitely have a place, and I could just be wrong.
Yeah, I remember when everyone first saw this card that they were all looking at like King Triton or these other high willpower characters and getting as much damage on them as possible and then drawing 6+ cards. Uh, they can dream. They can dream. Moving on to Peter Pan Stagger, 2-cost uninkable item. Your characters with evasive get +1 strength. You run this in an evasive deck. If that evasive deck is good right now, I don't know. Probably not right now.
I don't even know if you run this in an evasive deck. Like, I just don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah, being uninkable and you're only getting 1 strength. I mean, it builds the more of these you have, but at the same time, a lot of your evasive characters aren't really challenging usually. Usually, evasive players want to
Yeah.
quest away. I guess
Mm-hmm.
to give them a little more swing on the clapback for when your stuff is challenged into, but even then, I don't think.
Got to work on that backhand.
Yeah.
All right, and for our final Ruby card, we have the one, the only Sword in the Stone. A one cost uninkable with Exert, pay 2 ink. Chosen character gets +1 strength this turn for each 1 damage on them. Could be good, probably not. Very conditional. It scales pretty well, but the question is whether you need that scaling. And so far in the game, we've seen that outside of like support, plus strength modifiers haven't really been all that useful. But that was before we had resist, which may change the game and makes these strength modifiers like sword in the stone much more valuable.
Very true. Yeah, I'll be very interested to see where this card ends up because it could be something like the shield from set one, where I think everyone kind of slept on it in the beginning, and then all of a sudden there was a deck that ran it and became a menace in that deck. But yeah, that is all of our Ruby cards. I feel like Ruby is kind of like the most polarizing color this set, with a whole bunch of vanillas and some lower end cards, but then some really big bangers, especially with the Challenge Matters cards.
Yeah, they're for Ruby. Yeah, there's very specific cards that are very good, and there's a lot of meh. But I feel like that's just Ruby in general as a color.
Yep. They come in swinging, and sometimes they miss, sometimes they hit. But when they hit really good.
Fair.
But yeah, thanks for listening with us. Comment below if there's any standout Ruby cards that you think we were off on or that you totally agree with. But otherwise, keep tuned in for the last few inks and glimmer on.